Okay, well, let's get to this. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's talk about open enrollment file processing and end of year payroll information. We have a lot of slides to go over today, so I'm just going to cut right to it and start the presentation. For those of you that are newer to working in school districts, I wanted to introduce myself and also the team that I work with here at KDE. We're technically called the School District Financial Systems Services Team. We're the Munis people or Enterprise ERP people. My name is Kristen Lambert. I'm the technical lead on the team. I work with Kim York, who's also a technical analyst, and Kathy Pelletier, who's our vendor partner with Tyler Technologies. Kim and I work closely together on particularly the CRIS imports helping there. So if you have any questions at all after the webcast, need assistance with your open enrollment import file, please send it to the Munis shared team box. Kim is great at helping answering those questions on this program. I'll be assisting as well, but it's better if you can send those to the team box. So the information is there on the screen. Want to talk about this year-end open enrollment process. We anticipate the file being available tomorrow morning. It is being run today, so it'll be processed tomorrow morning. It's a very large file. I imagine typically your daily files are delivered around 7:30 each morning. Since this is a large file, it probably won't be there till 8 or 8:30 for the process to split it. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow, but I will send a notification once it's available. There was an end of year guide that was sent out, and with the reminder about the webcast. You do want to follow the steps in the guide. It's there for a reason. Doing things out of order could cause some unintended consequences. And one housekeeping item I did forget to mention, if you have any questions during this webcast, we do have a Q&A available to you, or the chat box. You can questions, type it in there, and we'll address those throughout the presentation. So I discussed the guide was included and sent in that reminder email this morning. And after the webcast is done today, I will post the slides to our SharePoint site, so you'll have access to the slide deck. The first thing you want to do is verify that all your open enrollment codes for next year, the health codes, were loaded into Munis, and you'll follow the steps here on the screen. It's in the Payroll Miscellaneous Codes program. At that point, after you open that program, you'll hop down the list and choose INSL for the insurance levels. Select Accept. And for most districts, after you select that, you'll see a message confirming a record set of 256 records. If you have less than that, it's likely some old codes have been deleted, or it's possible that the new codes were not installed in your environment. And if that's the case, you will have to do that yourself, and we can talk about that more later. This is the list of codes. Anyone working in version 2021, a lot of districts have upgraded at this point, you're able to import these codes. So if you don't see those codes in your system, we can provide you a file so you can import the codes into Munis. Actually, starting this time next year, you will be responsible for importing those codes yourself. We'll no longer be scripting and distributing those codes. It's become very challenging to try to do that. It's very much a one-off. So luckily, Munis in version 2021 allows the ability to import those codes. So double check that those codes have been loaded. So when you import your file, the plans will be displayed correctly. The step 2 is verify your records in the pending area. So if you have, or maybe you took over your job recently and somebody before you had left a whole bunch of old records sitting there, there's no reason for old records to be sitting in the pending area. If they're there, do they need to be fixed? Do they need to be updated? Deductions applied to the people? You need to take a look at those. If they're not meant to be there any longer, they're old records, let's get rid of them. So take a look in your pending area and see what needs to be done with those. If there's any old unprocessed records, do something with them. Any remaining records there should really be deleted, purged, because they're no longer needed, because at this point, we're moving forward with 2024 health insurance deductions. If you're not familiar with the pending area, when you open the main screen, you select Import Pending from the main screen. Then you can select the Import Later option, and that will direct you to view pending records. It's a pending, list of records that has been imported at some point. So if nothing's there, it means you have no pending records. But if you select Import Later and see records there, that means you have records sitting in the pending area. And to get rid of those, it's pretty straightforward. You select Update, select All, Accept, and then you can select Purge to delete those individual records. And you'll want to do that again for old records. The next step would be to go ahead and import the open enrollment file that you received. When you're ready to work on that file, go ahead and import it. We expect tomorrow morning. Those files can be imported into the pending area, and you can look at those before your December payrolls are complete. So we can go through a majority of this process until your December payrolls are complete. So when you import the open enrollment file, of course, you'll be able to tell that it's your open enrollment file based on the date, which should be tomorrow. And also the open enrollment file is larger than your typical daily file. So if you don't import it tomorrow and wait maybe till next week and you've received other files since then, you'll be able to identify that open enrollment file based on the file size as well as the date. When you go to import the file, you'll select Accept on the export filter, and that's going to give you an Excel file that you can open. You'll want to download that report and you can proof it. The next selection would be, 1, proceed to the proof stage. And you'll import that file. One thing we do want to mention is when you import your open enrollment file, you need to also import files afterwards in order. So do not skip around and import files you receive after the open enrollment file first. These files must be imported in order. The way the Munis program works, as well as the way Chris works, is it sequentially makes changes. So if you import a file 2 weeks from now, before you import the open enrollment file, it could really throw things off. You wouldn't have the most current information on that employee. So just a reminder, this goes on all year. You want to import those files in the order they are received. Something that always causes confusion every year is the effective date on records. So your health insurance, FSA, vision, dental, they're all going to have an effective date. It was January 1st, 2024. Your life insurance, though, basic, optional, dependent life, all those life insurance dates are going to reflect the date the employee enrolled in that insurance. So it could be years ago, or it could be January 1st, 2024 if they took life insurance for the first time. So for those life insurance records, when you see an effective date that is not in 2024, that is expected, and that would be what is set on file. So the next step is setting the deduction start date and move those records to active. After all those prior steps were done, you would select Update, enter your deduction start date, and the deduction start date always too causes a lot of questions that we get in our box. The deduction start date is totally dependent on you. I would suggest 1 day before your payroll period. Our examples you'll see in the next screen, I use like 12/14. Our payroll runs from December to the end of December. The first January check is going to be the first deduction for health insurance. Whatever date you choose is fine. It just needs to be 1 day before the payroll period, before that health insurance deduction is supposed to be deducted. So you set the deduction start date and move records to active. If you have only open enrollment records sitting in pending, you can go ahead and skip to the next step. But if you've imported some files since open enrollment records have been received a few weeks later from now and you're working on your open enrollment file, you probably want to filter so you're only working with your open enrollment file. You can, when you or in the import and pending area, you can select the search button, and you can search by different variables. You can search by your the import file name for the open enrollment, so you can enter that in there, and then you tab through and select all the different benefit types that you see at the bottom and accept, and that will filter, so the only records that you'll be working on are the open enrollment file. If you haven't imported any records since the open enrollment file, you don't need to worry about this stuff. It's just a little tool to help. So again, talking about setting the deduction start date and moving the records to active, you'll select update from there, select all and accept, and selecting all again is assuming that you're only working on the open enrollment file. You'll select the start date button, the set start date button, and then enter the date that you assigned it and move the records to active. So this is taking all your records in your pending bucket and moving them over to the active record bucket in the benefit records program. I've only received one question on this in all the years I think I've been doing this. It's about post-tax health deductions. Maybe this applies to, and I'm not sure the rules and laws on it, maybe an adult's child that's covered by their parents' insurance up to a certain date, and I could be totally wrong there, but if you had that situation, you as a health insurance coordinator would probably know that. If the person was supposed to have this health deduction done as post-tax, you would have to toggle that pre-tax field, and more information is available in the Kentucky Employee Benefits Guide on processing that. Doubt it applies to very many people though. I want to remind everybody that you want to do this process throughout the years. Records must be moved to active throughout the entire year because these records are vital to processing the federal reimbursement. The health records include the health insurance amount on there, and if you're not importing those files and moving them over to active, the federal reimbursement process cannot look at the correct dollar amounts to calculate. So at this point, we've imported the open enrollment file, moved them to active, set a start date. Your next step is just to make sure all your 2023 payrolls are completed. Once that is done, I always suggest to delete last year's deductions and let's start with a clean slate. And that's easily done with a global function in Munis. And this only applies to all the state-sponsored plans that I'm suggesting delete. If you have third-party administrator for some extra insurance, you can deal with that separately. But when you go into the employee deductions program, on the far right side, there's a global option. You select that and then the delete button. This screen will come up and you can select from a drop-down menu a deduction code. So just go down the list and choose employee health insurance and select the accept, and yes, you want to delete those deductions, and it'll delete the deductions for all people. So don't do this though until your 2023 payrolls are all completed. Okay, now we're at the point where you're going to process the update deductions. You do not want to do this until all the prior steps are completed. Make sure 2023 payrolls are done, deductions are deleted. From the Kentucky Employees Benefit menu, you'll select Benefit Records. And this process is actually something you can do year-round. It's really nothing different from your daily processing. The only thing that we're doing different is we're working with a lot more records than we used to. So from that menu, you'll select Current Find. The Current Find will filter, so you only have the most current high sequenced records for all employees. So select Current Find, and then the Update Deductions button. And from this point, you'll select Define again and enter a minimum deduction start date. This is the deduction start date that we did earlier when we moved those records to active. And by doing this, it will filter out any old unprocessed records that weren't processed before that date. So again, this is reasoning you can use throughout the year. I'm using 12/14/2023 as an example at some point here in the presentation. If it's July and you're working on importing records, you can use a minimum deduction start date of, say, June 30th. So any old unprocessed records don't get pulled in when they shouldn't. So select define, enter the minimum deduction start date. That's the start date you set when moved to active. There's the example where I use 12/14/2023. Same steps that you normally do. Toggle, so select all, and you can output post all those records. One thing to note when you're doing your update deductions, you do not want to have the employee deductions program open at that time, so try to close that before proceeding. Just prevents anything from possibly getting locked. And then you'll get a notice, do you want to post the deductions? And it also gives you a warning there, and select yes. And then something that also hangs a lot of people up each year is if you're doing this for a future date, in the employee deductions program, and also job salary too, for that matter, you can look for historical, future, current, specific date. So if I process this file today, but put a January 1st effective date on there and went and searched on that employee and wondered where their deduction was, I would not find it if current was selected. Down here on the bottom of the screen, you can see where I highlighted future. So you can select future on your search and you'll find the deduction there. It's another filter. It's kind of hidden down below. Just want to make everybody aware of that. If for any reason, knock on wood, I hope this doesn't happen, but for any reason you have a posting error, please take a screenshot of that. You can use a snipping tool that's in Windows. That helps us diagnose which record could possibly be causing the error. Send a team an email message, and we can chat with you on the phone and help you fix any issues that may pop up. Let's see here. Just another reminder that the update deduction process is important to do. It posts both not just the employee amount, but the employer amount. And that amount is used in W-2 processing. So it is your district responsibility to make sure both those amounts are posting. Just a little bit more miscellaneous information. Continue importing the files that you received after the official open enrollment file. You want to do those in order. The files that you receive after the open enrollment file, they could contain both 2023 and 2024 records. So this is where it gets a little tricky. If you receive any 2023 records after you've already imported the 2024 open enrollment file, you will need to manually update the employee deductions and payroll to correct any amount or collect any amount that is owed. If you move those 2023 records to active, it will overwrite the 2024 deduction amounts. And then you'll have to go back and do that again. So just remember, if you receive 2023 records after you've processed the 2024 open enrollment file, you do need to do some manual intervention to collect that 2023 amount owed. FSA amounts after enrollment. The amount sent on the file is the total for the year. So when you do your open enrollment file, it's pretty straightforward. 24 cycles, however many your district uses, it's going to divide it out, and they'll have a flat amount per paycheck for the year. But if you have a change or a late hire, the FSA amount you will have to figure out yourself. All you have to do is select update and update the cycles on that record, and Munis will calculate how much that is per payroll. And then you go about doing your normal processing of the records and moving the records to active and posting the deduction. So again, that's after the open enrollment file. The amount on the file reflects a full year. We don't know how many pay cycles you have left in your district at that point in the calendar year when you're processing it. So you just need to select update and change the number of cycles, and it'll help calculate it for you. Okay, I just rambled on for a while. I don't see any questions here at this point in the chat. for the Q&A. Let me take a much needed break because I really did ramble. Sorry about that. Okay, so open enrollment file information. We went through all that. We're going to talk about miscellaneous year-end information. There's a lot to cover in this, different little things. So a reminder, before you do your first payroll for the year, you do need to update your Social Security maximum amount in the employee benefit, the deduction and benefit master. You just go in there, select update, and update the 2024 amounts to the maximum of $10,453.20. And for this year, this is new for everyone. We're no longer able to distribute tax tables via a script. Kentucky was a one-off. It wasn't done for any other clients. Tyler can do tax tables for you. There is a fee associated with it. Don't know what that would be. They would actually just access your system and type it in the same as you would. So this year it is going to be your responsibility to enter both the federal and state tax tables. Prior tax tables will continue to work until the new ones are entered in your system. Kentucky has already released the tax tables for this next year. Federal government has not. Last I looked, it was still in draft version. So once that is available, I'll be able to provide more information. For your Kentucky tax tables, that's pretty easy to do. There's a link here in the presentation with more information at the Department of Revenue. And you'll open your tax program, and you can do this at any point for 2024 because it won't be effective until January 1st, 2024. You can open that tax tables program, search for the Kentucky table, the effective date of January 1st, 2023. Select copy and copy to the effective date of January 1st, 2024. At that point, you select the calc button on the ribbon, and you'll update the gross wage minus. So that's a standard deduction of $31.60. And we're not done yet. You still need to select the tax table button on the ribbon and select update and the percentage field to 4%. Taxes are going down. How often do you hear that? So we're going down 0.5% this year. Federal tax tables for 2024, as I mentioned, they've only released in draft version at this point. Each district is responsible for entering their own tax tables, and prior tax tables will continue to work. Now, this is a great time of year to review your payroll control settings. I've discussed this in years past. It's a payroll control setting that's called use frequency when annualizing. And why does this matter? It matters because of late hires. If you've ever had a late hire that started in September, first time new employee, and they just feel like they're not having enough of their federal taxes being withheld, that's based on your payroll control settings and what it's using to calculate an annual gross. So, and I'm going to stop here because I get distracted easily. I'm like squirrel. I looked in the chat. Can you show the page with the link for the state tax rates? Stacy, I believe that is actually in the guide with the information, and the slides will be available afterwards. So you'll be able to look at it then. So I'm sorry, I totally stopped on that. But let's talk about the using frequency and annualizing, because I think this is a really important setting that you want to look at in your system on how it's taxing people. Doing this at the beginning of the calendar year is a great time to do it because you can just say it's new tax tables, new year. The people won't see anything. They expect possibly a difference. So the payroll control setting, the federal tax either looks at the number of pays in job salary or the pay frequency in job salary. So if your control setting is set to no, then Munis will use the employee's number of pays from employee job salary to calculate the federal income tax. So that's bad for late hires. Like I talked about, that person gets hired in September. It's only thinking they're making, 3 months worth of salary for the entire year. when we know they still have another 6 months or year left the following calendar year on that contract. If your payroll control setting is set to yes, it will use the full number of periods associated with the pay frequency. So 26 for biweekly or 52 for weekly. So the number of pays, whether it pulls from the pay frequency or number of pays and employee job salary, based on that above setting, is then used to annualize the employee's gross that is then used to calculate the federal tax. So for example, if you have the payroll control setting set to no, if you have an employee that has 15 number of pays defined in employee job salary and a pay frequency of semi-monthly, Enterprise ERP will take the employee's deduction gross for their federal income tax and multiply it for 15, ignoring the pay frequency. So in comparison, if you have the payroll control setting set to yes, it will look at that pay frequency semi-monthly and multiply the employee's deduction gross by 24, ignoring that 15 numbers of pay. So that's something worthwhile to take a look at. If you have any questions, though, those do need to be directed to Munis support. The another thing that we love this time of year, the ACA 1095C reporting. The draft deadline that I saw online was March 1st. The form is due to employees, and April 1st, 2024, the electronic file is available. The file for the dependents and participants that we work with DEI is anticipated to be available around January 10th. It does take me working with Tyler, Department of Employee Insurance, somebody here also within KDE has a number of people that have to work on this to distribute it. So it will not be distributed before January 10th. And we will, of course, send a notification once it's available. I always get emails going, when's it going to be available? When's it going to be available? We'll let you know when it's available. We work hard to get that out to you, but expect around January 10th, but we'll let you know at that time. And final plug here, after the webcast, this is where the slides are going to be at. So I'm going to actually here, let me navigate to the link and I can drop it in the chat. So you can just copy and paste this into your browser if you don't have it already. This does require you to use your email address and password for your district to access the site. The SharePoint site has links to lots of different information. In the documents folder, there is a webcast slides folder. I'm going to drop the webcast slide deck there. Sometimes things are pretty big. I don't file size. It's just not optimal to email those out. It's better to put them on the SharePoint site. And then they're also there for future reference. There's lots of other information available on the SharePoint site. You'll see over on the left, I have a link to some pages with some just good to know information, as well as all the emails that we've sent out and links, useful links to such as chart accounts on the KDE website. And that's my plug on that. I want to alleviate anyone's fears on processing the open enrollment file. It really is no different than processing a daily file you receive at the district. It's just all your people, which I understand why, there's concern and, a little fear on doing that. But the guide does walk you through the steps. There is a Kentucky Employee Benefits Guide that walks you through importing files too. If you have any questions, we really do prefer if you could send those to the team box. Both Kim and I can respond via email, give you a call on the phone, help however we can. I'll send an email tomorrow once that file is available. That actually went a lot quicker than I thought because I kind of fumbled through the first part, so sorry about that. I'm here for questions. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand, throw it in the chat. That's all I had to present today. So I'll hang out here for a moment to see if any other questions come in after the webcast is done. If you have any questions, send an email to that munis@education.ky.gov. And that's it. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you all have happy holidays, Merry Christmas, good New Year. Doesn't feel like it for me yet because it hasn't been very cold yet. So thanks. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my camera and mic.